One of my favorite preaching texts. You guess which one? Which one do you think it is? The first one. 2 Kings chapter 5, verses 1 through 14. Every time the lectionary brings this story around, I get so excited because it is such a rich story with so many modern day applications. The stars are Naaman, a great and haughty military commander, Elisha, the aloof prophet, and several unnamed servants who offer some of the most incisive advice on humility the Bible has ever dispensed. The story is ostensibly about healing, but its wisdom extends far beyond that singular topic. So what happens in that story? I know we heard it already, but let's review the highlights. Well, this great military general Naaman, a mighty man who has conquered nations with the strength of his arm, nevertheless finds himself powerless against a disease, some form of skin lesion, perhaps leprosy. Different versions of the Bible say something a little bit different. But regardless, it seems to have been severe enough to warrant rather significant attention. It wasn't just a rash. Upon hearing that there might be a prophet in Samaria who could heal him, Naaman's king dispatches him immediately. And he doesn't just send Naaman alone, but hands him a royal letter, one king to another, a personal request. But it's not just a letter. The king also loads Naaman up with a huge gift of money and fancy clothing. A gift, or a payment, or a bribe. Now there's some drama once Naaman reaches Israel, but eventually the prophet Elisha allows him to swing by the house with his beautiful horses and his gaudy chariots, with his gifts of money and fine clothes. And there, Naaman waits. And he waits, expecting Elisha to come out to him and to welcome him. And so he waits. And he waits. Can you imagine being in his shoes? Imagine being a powerful military hero. People normally wait on me. And here I am, having traveled a long way, having hauled these gifts all over the countryside, having been bounced from the palace and sent down into these filthy streets to this house. And now this man of God won't even come out to talk to me? Talk about crappy customer service. I thought that this great prophet would come out and call upon the name of his God and wave his hands dramatically over the spot and cure my skin disease. That's what I deserve. What a charlatan. I'm definitely not leaving a tip. 0 stars on Google Maps. And so Naaman waits, and he waits. And finally, there's a stirring at the door, but it's not Elisha. The audacity. He has not come himself, but has sent a lowly servant. And what does that servant say to this great and powerful warrior? Hey, go down to the river and take a bath. Go on down to the river and take a bath. Now, it's a little more complicated than that, but go down to the river and take a bath seems to be exactly how Naaman heard and received that prophetic command, because he gets incredibly angry and starts off down the street yelling, "Are not the rivers of my home country just as good, if not better, than all the waters of Israel? Why am I here? Why have I come all this way if I could have just stayed at home and taken a bath and been cleansed?" Enraged, he storms off down the street, but eventually he calms down enough. He stops yelling. His servants are able to rein him in, and they give Naaman the best advice he's ever heard in his life. It's humbling advice for this proud man who has become so used to great victories and parades and celebrations and parties and rewards and honors and medals that anything less than the most dramatic would feel cheap and beneath him. These servants say to him, "If the prophet had commanded you to do something difficult, wouldn't you have done it?" And implicitly, of course, the answer is, of course, I'm a great and mighty man. If I'd been asked to do something difficult, of course I would have done it. So they say to him, if you had been commanded to do something difficult, wouldn't you have done it? Then how much simpler should it be? How much easier should it be for you to do something simple instead? If all he has said to you is wash and be clean. And so it is that Naaman stopped yelling, and he instead humbled himself, and he went down to the Jordan as he'd been commanded, and he immersed himself 7 times in the water, as Elisha's servant had told him. And his skin disease was cured. Beyond cured, in fact, his skin was so thoroughly renewed that it was perfect, like that of a young boy, all the sagginess gone away, all the wrinkles young again. That's the kind of skincare routine that I need. How often have you heard somebody beat their chest like Naaman and make grandiose claims about the great heights or lengths that they would go to out of love or patriotism? I mention the latter because we just celebrated July 4th, and it makes us think about our independence and our history and the great fight. Lots of people like to think back and imagine what they would have done in times like those, or times in the future that might come. Now, sometimes it's a genuine expression, like in the case of our love for family. I love my partner so much, I love my children so much that I would gladly die for them. I dare say most of the people in this room have probably felt that way at one point or another. You've probably said it at one point or another. But other times it can take on a bit of an ego, a braggadocio, a machismo, right? I'm ready to take up arms and sacrifice my life for my country. And these are times when Naaman's story should perk up our ears. Because in most cases, bear with me, in most cases, we are not called upon to sacrifice ourselves in the name of love or for the sake of our country. We're typically not asked on a day-to-day basis to make grand sacrifices or achieve heroic feats. Instead, we're asked to make small and consistent daily contributions to the growth and flourishing of our families and communities. Your spouse doesn't want you to die for them. They want you to live for them. They want you to go to the gym for them and to cut down on alcohol and cholesterol for them. They want you to stay around, right? Your community, your country doesn't want you to die for us. We want you to show up at community events and village hall meetings and trustees meetings, and we want you to vote. These are the things that we are asked for, what our loved ones in our country and our community really desire for us. It's not the grand things all the time so much as it is the little things, the daily things. And it is, in fact, often easier to fantasize about the grandiose acts than to do the day-to-day work of humble service. It's often easier to fantasize about the grandiose, that heroic moment where I'll save my family or save my country than it is to actually just do the day-to-day work. And that's where I hear that echo of Naaman's servants. If the prophet commanded you to do something difficult, would you have done it? Yes, of course I would. Of course I would do the big and difficult and demanding thing. But then the servant immediately says, then how much more should it be when you're asked to do something simple? If you're willing to die for your country, you should be willing to just do the small patriotic things too. If you're willing to die for your family, you ought to be willing to take out the trash as well, right? It's an inversion of our cultural expectations about heroism. In our popular imagination, heroes are supposed to be great and powerful and flashy, like Naaman. They're supposed to be tall and strong and shake the ground when they walk. And if a hero like Naaman has a problem, surely it must be of such great magnitude that only an equally bombastic solution must be appropriate. Elisha's got to come out and wave his hands and call upon the name of God and make that spot disappear. And yet here in the scriptures, Elisha treats Naaman just like any other person, and he gives him just the normal advice he would have given to anyone. Go down to the river and take a bath. So often we long for our lives to be transformed by something dramatic. We want clarity, a sign, a miracle. But like Naaman, we forget that God meets us in the ordinary, in the day-to-day, in the waters of daily life, and in the quiet voice of a friend, in simple acts of obedience. And as it was for Naaman on that day, so it is for us. This morning, we're invited into the healing grace of God through a simple and sacred act, one that we participate in liturgically and repeatedly on a monthly basis. In Holy Communion, we remember and return to Christ's upper room. It's a simple room. It is not flashy. It is not adorned with money and fancy clothes. There is no bribing your way into the upper room. It's a simple room devoid of pomposity, a room where the very greatest of persons exemplified a different kind of heroism, a humble heroism, by washing the feet of his disciples, breaking bread and sharing wine among friends, just as he had done with outcasts and tax collectors all throughout his ministry. May we, like Naaman, lay down our pride and take up the bread yet again instead. Just as he immersed himself repeatedly in the waters of the Jordan, may we receive these gifts of bread and wine yet again as ordinary channels of God's extraordinary love. Nothing grand, nothing dramatic or flashy, just grace, simple and sufficient. And just like Naaman, for us, it's just a matter of following the simple instruction that has been given by the greatest prophet of all. Take and eat, this is my body. Take and drink, all of you, this is my blood of the new covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. Do this in remembrance of me. Let us lay down our pride and just do what the prophet tells us to do. May it be so.